All right, good evening, everybody. We will call the Committee of the Whole for the City of Belvedere for March 28, 2022 to order. The clerk will call the roll, please.
Brereton.
Here.
Fleury. Fleury is absent. Frank.
Here.
Freeman.
Here.
McGee.
Here.
Mulhall. Mulhall is absent. Porter.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Snow.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
8 present.
All right, thank you. Under public comment, we have Mr. John Albertini here this evening, registered for public comment. Hi, John. How you doing? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. I won't tie up your time very long. I made a statement last week about the Cellos, the restaurant closing by my house. I guess I was in error. My wife saw some equipment being moved in there, so I went by and read a sign on the front door. It says it's just temporarily closing due to revamping and staff shortage. That hopefully they will reopen in the future, but I didn't want my statement to be out there that they were closing. It's just a temporary thing. That's all. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you coming down. And that's good to know that they're not closing. All right, we do not have anything under public forum, reports of officers, boards, and special committees. Public safety unfinished business, we have none. Public safety new business, police update, Chief Woody.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Update since the last time we met. Saturday, March 19th, the Belvedere Police Department responded to a barricaded subject. It originally started as a 911 call for a domestic battery. Ultimately, police got there. Suspect barricaded himself in one of the bedrooms armed with a knife. We activated the SWAT team, ultimately took control of the immediate area, and then once negotiators got on scene, they began negotiating with the subject for about 6 hours. The incident was resolved with chemical munitions, ultimately forcing the subject out of the bedroom and giving up without any additional force being necessary. So, then in addition to that, Shep was transferred to his new owner, thanks to the council approving that. Sounds like everything's going well and no issues so far, so thank you for your support in that. The Belvedere Police Department is in the process of becoming a member of a Ring Neighbors Public Safety Service. Apparently, Ring has a service. They allow local law enforcement to participate without actually having a Ring camera themselves or a Ring product. They can access the website, and then if there is criminal activity in the neighborhood, they can notify people within a geographical location of things that are going on, and then ultimately request anybody in that area, if they have video, to share that with local law enforcement if they so choose. So that's something we're looking into and trying to become a part of. So if successful, I think that could be mutually beneficial for both the city and the police department. And last thing on my list, the police department has a Fire and Police Commission meeting on Wednesday where we'll be presenting backgrounds and peer interviews for 3 lateral police candidates. I'll entertain any questions at this time.
Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Chief, I saw or read that the Illinois State Police had sent out notices to all the departments looking for donations to help the effort in Ukraine. And Freeport has donated 3 dozen of their retired Kevlar vests, and McHenry, East Dundee, Orland have also chosen to participate in this. Do we have anything that we could donate or help out that effort with?
We're looking into it at this time. Nothing comes to mind. I know a few years back, we had donated some ballistic vests to a department in southern Illinois. They didn't have vests at all. Beyond that, no, we don't have any equipment that I think would be useful for that particular situation.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Chief Woody? All right, it sounds like that ring may be another good opportunity to add to a neighborhood watch. I mean, it is a, anything to make the neighborhoods more complete regarding public safety, I would think that that would be a plus. So I'll be interested to see how we do. Thank you, Chief. All right, item 2B, Fire Department, Chief Heiser.
Thank you, Mayor. Since our last report, your fire department has responded to 212 calls for service. Plaster repairs, that was voted through this past couple weeks. The plaster repairs are now complete at station number 1. We are now in the process of getting painting quotes for the places that were patched up. And the roof, today, the roof replacement on the administration side of station number 1, it was started, and we're expected to be completed later tomorrow or maybe Wednesday morning. So I will take any questions.
Okay. Alderman Stevens.
What's going on with 142? Haven't heard much about it, and I heard we're trying to make changes to it.
Rescue 142, or as some of you referred to as a mini pumper, here lately we had some recalls with it. It was up in Kaiser Ford, and some nozzles were destroyed because of the cold. Okay, and also here recently we are going to look into putting a 24-foot ladder on it. So I'm looking for brackets that'll enable that to happen.
Is it going to be a ladder rack like's on the trucks that moves up and down? And what do I hear about the hose bed?
The hose bed is at 300 foot right now. I'd like to make it to 500, so we're going to put some extensions on the sides. And the ladder rack, yes, it's something that you'd pull from the back, it'd come to the rear, and then you'd walk away with it at that point.
What's this going to run about?
Should be around $2,000.
Okay, is that up above what has to come to council for approval?
Well, did you have that, Chief? What is that coming out of? What line item will that be coming out of?
Be out of the equipment.
Okay, and you have that in your budget?
We have enough money in the budget for that, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Is that all? Is that all, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That is it.
Thank you. All right, moving on, item 3, Finance and Personnel, unfinished business, we have none. Item 4, Finance and Personnel, new business. Finance Department update. Ms. Hanson.
Thank you. Prior to the start of the meeting, you had in front of you a revised fire department pages reflecting potential expenses associated with the selection of a new fire chief, a recap of the general fund and specific general fund pages as amended, and capital projects fund. Tonight we'll be reviewing the 2 final funds, general and capital. As with past reviews, we encourage questions and conversations, as the goal is to have a clean budget with the exception of union wages by the end of tonight, as the first reading of the budget ordinance is scheduled for next Monday. We do anticipate the need to amend the budget, as more than likely the 4 union contracts currently being negotiated will not be settled prior to April 18th, which is the public hearing and second reading for the budget ordinance. And then if you just give me just a minute to get the screen up, we'll go ahead and start the review.
Okay. Take as much time as you need.
right, so first thing you've got here is a recap of the general fund budget. Just a quick, obviously, we'll be going through these line items in just a minute, so just wanted to point out the difference between when you first got a copy of the recap back when you received your binders. I think it was mentioned that it would certainly change over time through these meetings. And at that point in time, I think the net cash flow is about $440. And obviously through changes in the budget and things like that and updates, it is now at $154,318. Moving on to revenues. Page 2, this is going to be a little tricky here going through each one. Page 2 is real property taxes. No change in this revenue line item as there is no increase in the tax levy. Just note the EAV history in the budget box. Page 3, hotel motel tax. The city only has one hotel paying this tax. Estimated revenue is based on current actuals. And just stop me at any time you have any questions or comments. Otherwise, I'll just keep going through each line item. Auto rental tax, the increase in the proposed revenue aligns with current receivables and is actually a bit conservative, which is the case with most revenue line items. That would be great. You can pull it towards you if you want to. Thank you. All right, page 5, municipal infrastructure maintenance. The formula historically used to forecast future revenues is based on current actuals. FY23 estimates are a 21% decrease over the current plan. Next page, state income tax. Some revenue line items are based on predictions made by the Illinois Municipal League. In this instance, while we made a note of IMLs per capita, the budgeted amount for FY23 has been increased to reflect what the city is experiencing and is actually a bit conservative. Home rule sales tax. The budgeted amount for home rule sales tax is a 27% increase over FY22 and is based on current year receivables. Municipal sales tax revenue predictions are based on actual receivables. FY23 anticipates a 29% increase from the current year. Page 9, sales tax to developers. As there has been no activity on this line item for 4 years, it will be eliminated when preparing next year's budget. Page 10, this next line item, local use tax, is another typically based on IML predictions. However, as the city is experiencing lower receipts, the proposed budget amount aligns with actuals and represents a 19% decrease. Page 11, local motor fuels tax revenue is expected to continue decreasing due to the number of remote workers, unemployed, and less traveling. As you can see, the plan for 23 is a decrease of 8.26%. Page 12, cannabis tax. IML predictions per capita are higher than what the city has been experiencing. Therefore, the budgeted amount has been lowered accordingly. Projections for replacement tax revenue on page 13 are conservative and are based on this year's actuals. Replacement tax distributed to pensions. This line item remains unchanged from the current budget as the tax levy remained unchanged. Page 15, business license. This is a revenue stream that has been impacted by COVID and the state of the economy. FY23 predictions are based on actuals and are conservative. Page 16, liquor license fees. The budgeted notes box shows the current number of liquor licenses, and the FY23 amount is based on those numbers. Amusement machines, page 17, this line item is revenue received from gambling licenses. Fees are due each May 1st. Court fines, this line is self-explanatory. As is page 19, parking fines. Same with page 20, seized vehicle fees. Engineering fees for subdivisions. We did put that at 0 as there has been no activity. Page 22, video gambling. This is one line item that the city should monitor over the course of the year as the Hard Rock Casino is constructed and opens. It's not believed that the casino will have a significant impact on the city's revenue, but it's one we will certainly watch.
Question. Why the big increase from 385 to 500 down?
Again, that's based on actuals. When I ran them at the end of January, we were already at 414,000. Oh, wait. Looks like I ran them again at the end of February, and we're up to 454. Page 23, franchise fees. This line item is self-explanatory, and revenue for FY23 was estimated as it has been historically.
Question. So where does the money from the franchise fee come from? What is that? That's obviously not the utility tax.
Comcast.
Comcast, thanks.
Page 25, death and birth certificates. This line item is self-explanatory. Same with page 26, accident and fire reports. Page 26, annexation and plat fees was returned to 0 for FY23. After discussions with multiple departments, we were unable to confirm the reason for the $20,000 in the current budget, therefore it's been returned to 0. Page 28, tipping fees for FY23 represent a 68% reduction from FY22 based on actuals.
So why has our tipping fees gone down so much when we actually added a new gravel pit?
The Irene Quarry specifically, William Charles is not taking any aggregate out of that pit at this time, so they're paying the minimum based on the agreement, pre-annexation agreement that they have with the city. That's the biggest factor. So when you see the big numbers, the 112, the 179, that's when they were doing all the work on 90 and the tollway, and that was one of the prime locations for stone. But for better part of last year and so far the forecasted future this year, it looks like there's probably not going to be a lot of product coming out of Irene.
Yeah, I was just curious, is there somebody monitoring those tipping fees as far as collection, or is it basically just on the honor system from the company themselves?
They're required to submit their monthly reports to us.
continuing on page 29, fuel charges paid by outside vendors. This line is self-explanatory, again, based on actuals. Page 30, interest income, also self-explanatory. Page 31, miscellaneous revenue. The 900% increase to miscellaneous revenue as a result of the $10,000 received monthly from MC Squared. So you know, MC Squared is a supplier of the city's electric aggregation program. The city entered into a 3-year contract with MC Squared and will receive the $10,000 a month for the duration of the contract.
Question, just technical.
Yeah,
You
go
said
ahead.
page 31, and on mine it's page 30. The last
Oh.
couple of pages seem to have been different. I didn't know if we were working on the same sheet of music here.
The page numbers are off, but everything else is fine, the line item? Okay. I'm working off of some printed forms, so I will just not refer to the page numbers. I'll just refer to the line items then. Thank you. All right, next page, operating transfer in, self-explanatory. As with the next one, property taxes. Next page, grants, police department. As indicated in the notes, the 75% decrease is due to moving the COSAP grant revenue to its own line item. Next page, police court fines. This line item is self-explanatory and has been decreased by 30% due to the creation of a separate e-citation line item. Next one, sex offender registry, also self-explanatory. The next one, miscellaneous revenues, has been reduced by 47%. In the current fiscal year, a significant amount of funds were donated for body-worn cameras, and that will not be received in fiscal year '23. Next page, school resource officer, does assume a 3% increase, so depending on union contracts, this could certainly change. Next page, property taxes, fire department. This line self-explanatory. Next page, grants for the fire department. The fire department has not received nor anticipates receiving any grants for FY23. Therefore, we have it at 0. Miscellaneous revenue for the fire department includes fees for CPR training and inspection fees. The 70% decrease for FY23 is reflective of current year revenues. Next page, road and bridge taxes. Our revenues received as part of the tax levy, therefore no change for next year. Sidewalk, driveway, and lot grading. This line item remains unchanged from the previous few years at 0. Miscellaneous revenue. As indicated in the budget notes, miscellaneous revenue is payment for street mechanics performing labor on other departments' vehicles. Next page, expense reimbursement. Revenue, this is what is received as part of insurance payouts, therefore it's a bit difficult to predict revenue each year. Expense reimbursement, street department fuel. As the expenses for the street department fuel have been moved to another line item, The budget for FY '23 remains at 0. We will work to remove this line item for future budgets. As it is no longer utilized. The sale of assets is self-explanatory. Property taxes for street lighting, revenue received through the tax levy, therefore it is unchanged from the current year. Electric utility tax, this line is self-explanatory.
Why do we see a decrease or anticipated, or is that just based on current use?
Based on current. Mhm. Gas utility tax, again, another self-explanatory line item and based on actuals. And the final utility tax is telephone. Again, as with the others, based on actuals. Let me just flip real quick. All right, if there aren't any questions, we'll go ahead and go over. Okay.
Sale of assets, so none of the departments are planning on selling any of their major equipment at this point for this next year?
Well, Public Works has a couple of old vehicles, but we're probably not gonna get much out of them. Once we're done with them, they're pretty well used up, so it would probably, in the overall scheme of things, it's probably pretty negligible for the budget amount.
Alderman Stowe?
How about when we get rid of squad cars that fall under that same thing, or is there a separate line item for that?
Good question. I don't have that. Good question. I can get back to you. I don't have the
Okay.
entire budget with me. I think there is a revenue line item. I don't recall what it is because I think that's where the money for the 2 squads went that we ended up having to move, that you and I talked about last week or the week before. But I don't remember what the name of the line item is. All right, moving on to expenditures. Salaries, elected officials, there's no change in this line item. For FY '23, salaries for elected officials are established by ordinance and cannot increase or decrease so as to take effect during the term of the office. Changes to salaries of elected officials must be done no less than 180 days before the beginning of the term of office for the officers whose compensation is to be fixed. Salaries for non-union city hall employees assumes a 3% increase. Next page, group health insurance. This line item is self-explanatory.
I'm showing here the sale of the Durango and then the insurance check we got from CCMSI. Both were put into the capital fund.
Right, I think that's what we moved. Yeah, it was put into one of your receivables and we moved it over to capital because that's where the expenses came out of. I think that might have been what you and I talked about last week or the week before. Dental insurance claims paid is self-explanatory. The budget for FY '23 represents a 14% decrease and is based on current expenditures.
Alderwoman Freeman?
Thank you. I'm sorry, Shannon. Back to the salaries, regular full-time. Are we not going to have interns anymore? Like, we have budget 0 for this year for interns?
I'm not aware of us using interns. I don't think we used them last year either. I think they might have been in the budget, but I don't think any were hired to the best of my knowledge.
No.
All right, group life insurance is self-explanatory. Health insurance reimbursement is indicated in the notes. This line item consists of COBRA payments from retirees and reimbursement from the Ida Public Library. The increase over last year is due to additional retirements. Unemployment compensation is self-explanatory. Meetings and conferences, this line item has been updated to reflect actual costs of memberships, the memberships utilized, and moved one chamber expense to a line item with similar pays. Next page, subscriptions and education materials. This line item is now primarily used for IML handbooks and certain legal publications. Previous administration also used it for a Wall Street Journal subscription, which has been canceled. Repairs and maintenance for buildings. The budgeted amount for this line item represents a 24% decrease from the current year due to the elimination of $10,000 for exterior painting of City Hall. The work was complete last summer. Repairs and maintenance equipment is indicated in the notes. This line item is used for repairs and maintenance to copiers, printers, and the like. Legal. The legal budget has been increased significantly for FY23 as funds have been designated for arbitration if necessary. As you know, the city and its 4 unions are currently negotiating new contracts. Next page, other professional services. The majority of expenses paid from this line item go to as of our audit solutions for utility tax collections. The city pays as of our 18% of the total fees collected. Telephone, this line item is self-explanatory. Codification. In previous years, codification-related expenses were paid from multiple line items. For FY23, funds designated for codification have been increased to bring all payables into one expense account. Other communications, this line item is self-explanatory and based on actual costs. The FY23 budgeted amount represents a 10% decrease. Office supplies, this is another self-explanatory line item and it has been reduced by 6.5% for FY23. Gas and oil, this is probably one of the most difficult to predict for our expenses given the fluctuation in gas prices. But again, is best guess based on current expenditures. Other supplies, the reduction in this line item is due to the removal of the expense related to the probation cleanup program, which has not been utilized since pre-COVID. Miscellaneous, as you can see, a variety of items are paid from miscellaneous. Let me know if you have any questions related to any specific expense. Operating transfer out is money in the general fund earmarked and transferred to other funds such as capital to pay for vehicle and equipment purchases and various projects. This line item could potentially be reduced through the use of American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA funds. The city's already received $1.7 million and will receive another $1.7 million this fall. Recommendations for use of the ARPA funds will be made at the next Public Works Committee meeting. Real property taxes, accounting, and auditing. This amount is determined by the tax levy. Next page, accounting and auditing. This is self-explanatory. Real property taxes, IMRF, another revenue line item determined by the tax levy. As is corporate replacement tax on the next page. Interest income, another line item that has not been utilized for several years. We will work to eliminate it from the FY24 budget. Next page, expense reimbursement, as indicated in the notes. This is revenue received from community development for IMRF. And the next page, IMRF, the decrease of 4.6% is due to the decrease in the IMRF rate for calendar year 2022. The estimated rate for calendar year 23 should be available by the end of April. Real property taxes, FICA and Medicare. This line item is also tied to the tax levy. Expense reimbursement, self-explanatory. Bless you. As is the next page, library expense reimbursement. And actually the next couple pages. FICA, which hopefully should be page 35. And Medicare 36. Real property taxes, insurance liability, another amount determined by the tax levy and unchanged. Liability insurance, self-explanatory. Salaries for public safety building employees. The next three line items relate to the public safety building. The city pays 1/2 of the county's salaries and 1/2 of the building expenses. So you've got salaries. Next page is FICA and IMRF. And on 41, included in capital purchases are a roof replacement for $65,000 and replacement of cast iron plumbing at $25,000. Page 42, physical exams. The current budget for police and fire physical exams includes psych evaluations as part of the promotion process for Sergeant Naaman's replacement. Therefore, the FY23 budget and the 75% reduction represents a return to historical spending levels. Other contractual services, this line item represents contracted services as they relate to police and fire commission activities. Real property taxes, civil defense, funded by the tax levy. Page 46, this line item is self-explanatory and it has had no activity for several years. Miscellaneous expense, civil defense, this line item is self-explanatory and has been reduced by 2.8%. Page 48 actually is 48 and, let's see, was actually reviewed as part of Public Works. As was 49 and 50. Next one, Council on Aging. The city has been paying $41,000 a year since 2012 to help fund the Boone County Council on Aging Transportation Program. $23,000 has been paid from this line item and $18,000 from Economic and Business Development. As the city is now paying the county directly instead of working through the Boone County Council on Aging, the entire amount will now be paid out of Economic and Business Development, thus the zero for this particular line item.
Could you repeat that about the Boone County Council on Aging?
Yeah, so we've been paying $41,000 a year to help run the buses, but it has been paid out of two different line items. So what we've done is we've actually, now that we're paying the county directly and not the Boone County Council on Aging, we used to pay them and then they would forward it to the county. Now we just pay the county directly. So we've eliminated this and moved that amount to Economic and Business Development, which you'll see in a minute, and then the whole 41 will be coming out of there. So that's
Okay.
why this is at zero.
Okay, because I was on the board for 6 years, and I know that that was sort of something that they didn't like, because they never could see when they got the money from the city. And I was wondering if that was, in your eyes, something that we should be doing?
So actually, when this came up, trying to understand this, I reached out to the Council on Aging and said, it looks like we've been paying you directly until a couple of years ago. And that's the way it was set up. Again, we would pay them and then they would forward the money to the county. Well, their auditors didn't want them doing that. They didn't want them being the middleman. So now we pay the county directly. And they actually are the ones that go out to bid and everything for those services. The county does.
Okay, but I remember Rachel, who does the books,
Yep.
they could never tell that they were paid by the city.
We
So-
used to pay them directly, so.
No, they liked it when they did
Yeah.
that because they could see that the money was there.
Yeah.
And so now it's just a guess, like, well, I guess we got paid from the city, we don't know because it goes to the county.
Yeah.
And I just thought for transparency reason, maybe we should do it like we used to.
Actually, Rachel was the one I talked to.
Okay.
And she kind of explained what happened, and again, it was at the request of their auditors.
Okay.
That they don't receive those payments go directly to the county.
Okay.
So again, the change was made by,
Okay,
is
well-
requested by their auditors, so they're the ones that directed us. Council on Aging was the one that directed us to do it differently.
Okay, now it's up to Clayton.
So at this point, it sounded like we were paying the Keenage Center. Keenage Center was sending it back to the county, and the county in turn was sending it back to the Keenage Center under their
Yeah.
billing process. Okay.
Anything,
All
Alderman Stevens?
What's the county paying them? Have they increased or decreased their, the Council on Aging?
I don't know what the county is contributing to the Council on Aging. I don't,
Yeah, I know they have, I don't know for sure either, and that's some further discussions we will be having with them. I know they do have a revenue stream for that particular line item, but I don't know exactly how much they pay, and I've got to know later on, I really don't know what the program is costing them either, because they've requested additional funds from us this year, but can't explain the reason for the increase. So unless they can explain why they're asking for more money, we haven't changed the amount in our budget.
Okay, because I was curious if the county was upping theirs or requesting us to up it so that they can up theirs.
Yeah.
well, we don't know because their request was for an additional 10,000 to raise the 41 to 51,000 without any stated reasons why. So you know, that's still, that still remains to be seen, but as of now, we'll go ahead and continue to fund it at the amount that was funded in the past.
All right, next page, demolition and other health nuisances. As indicated in the notes, items paid include mowing of abandoned properties. Planning Department services, the 90% reduction in the budget represents the removal of $25,000 from the Regional Planning Commission. At one point, the city paid for a commission employee to be on-site part-time, but that person has not been here since FY20. And then economic and business development, as mentioned previously, the payment to the county towards funding the Boone County Council on Aging. Transportation program has been moved into this line item. While it's been suggested the city's contribution increase from 41 to 51,000, absent an intergovernmental agreement in place and justification for the increase, the city will continue to make the historical payment of 41,000. Next page is tourism and is self-explanatory. Historic preservation is self-explanatory and represents a 9% decrease for FY23. And then the last 6 line items relate to Buchanan Street strolls. As the Chamber of Commerce will be hosting them moving forward, all 6 have a 0 budget for FY23.
Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. I want to go back real quick before we move on to page 23 under the miscellaneous. And so apparently we have stopped funding the sister cities, and also the Rockford Mass Transit City subsidy. Are we not having the bus anymore?
Well, that was a decision that I had made. Both of those I had made. I think that at some point or other we have not raised our levy, and we have to live within our means. And the way I looked at it is, for the taxpayers, there are no sacred cows. I tried to take out of this budget where I felt was appropriate. I know that since I had taken office, I had followed the RMT bus numerous times. And of probably, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 times that I followed that bus, I have seen, besides the driver, 2 riders once and 1 rider another time. So to me, I had proposed this to the council because I don't believe that, you know, if we don't see that ridership, I don't believe we have value for our investment. And it's up to the council, but I had taken it out. Regarding the sister cities, again, I don't know what specific value $2,000 does for the city. I can think of a lot of other ways that we can certainly use that money, but that's why you see them removed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Along with the bus transportation, do you have any idea if RMTD would still be providing any busing from the Rockford area to the Rock Valley College campus here?
I don't know if they would or not. To me, I think Rock Valley College is also is a taxing body like our school, our education districts. They provide busing. The city doesn't provide busing. So whether or not, if they have an agreement to provide busing for that, I don't know. None that I'm aware of yet. However, I would say that if they're going to provide busing to Rock Valley College from if they're going to come from some of the other educational, some of the other high schools, or wherever they're going to come from. Rock Valley College certainly has funds available for that. The city, it's up to the city, I think, to substantiate whether or not you're getting any value for it. Maybe they will come back, but as yet, I haven't heard that. Alderman Snow, and then Alderman Porter, then Alderman Stevens.
Recently, or 6 months or so ago, I saw the Van Gelder buses coming and going from the campus here, and it turns out that they had some kind of contract with Van Gelder to go from one campus to another, to another, to another with that same bus service. So you would think that they would just potentially contract with RMTD, at least for the hub of coming from the Rockford Depot over on Lyford. But, and that would at least run the bus to part of Belvedere.
Yeah. Well, that may be something they may decide to do. I don't know. Alderman Porter.
Yeah, I was just going to say on their RVC website, they are advertising a free shuttle bus out to the technology center, so it looks like they are going to provide that.
Okay. And Alderman Stevens.
I see the bus regularly while I'm delivering parts, and like you said, I've seen just about no times when there's anybody riding the thing, because I do try to pay attention, and I don't see anybody riding it except the driver.
Yeah, I know that I had some preliminary discussions with RMT, and they wanted to expand their bus service not only here but elsewhere in different communities, and I think the buy-in for the taxpayers here was preliminary discussions were an additional $230,000. And so at some point, as I had said before, I think we have to look at what is a bargain for the taxpayers and what's a necessity. And is there any, is there anything that we can take a good look at and decide if we truly need it? In my opinion, I didn't include it in this budget. So, any other discussion? Any other questions? And I didn't mean to, I don't want to take that lightly. I think sometimes when we look at what I call sacred cows with government, with expenses, with services that may be provided, that they may have always done it because they've always done it. I think at some point or other it needs to be taken, needs to have a good look taken at it, and that's exactly what I think. I think it's required that we don't get any value out of that. At least I don't see it. But yeah. Thank you.
The final piece is the Capital Projects Fund. So what you have is actually a recap of the anticipated projects and purchases you've seen on the 5-year plan. There have been no revisions, so we can certainly go through it, but what this does is just kind of break down a little further the line items from which some of the expenses, the money will be received and expended, but it's the same thing on the 5-year capital plan that you've seen.
Alderman Snow.
So, toward the end, we were talking about the Buchanan Street strolls and a bunch of those going to zero, but before, and I don't know where it would have shown up here, but Public Works would provide the trash containers and removals and a lot of barricade stuff. Where does that fall into the scheme of things, or is that just miscellaneously built into the Public Works street department?
Good question. I don't think I saw that as expenditures when I pulled the histories on them, but I can certainly double check and make sure I didn't miss something.
Well, theoretically, there's no direct expense. It's just time and effort on our part, and we'll still continue to set up and take down after them.
Alderwoman Freeman.
Thank you. So, Director Anderson, There's people from Ward 5, obviously, watching. And can you talk to them a little bit about, I've always been an advocate that we need something in the budget for the Fifth Ward flooding. Can you talk to them a little bit about how our 6th Street low-flow channel and the work that we're doing on Fifth Avenue and how much the detention ponds will, I guess, have the trickle-down effect of actually also helping the Fifth Ward residents?
Sure. As far as the high school ponds, the projects up there that were done or have been completed now, getting finished up with final payment and so forth, paperwork, but for all practical purposes, construction on those 2 projects is completed. And that basically relieves a huge burden of water right out of the beginning of the basins that goes through the Fifth Ward. So the fact that we've got them now under control, where previously, prior to the improvements, they were basically bypassing the detention areas and just free-flowing into our storm sewer system. Now they're going through the detention basins and being detained, which will make the entire process for stormwater drainage that much better for all the residents in those areas. As touched upon also, our 6th Street low-flow channel, that work is finally, design work and permitting process is wrapping up, and we plan to have that under construction this year. And again, that'll be, although it's downstream a ways from the residents in the Fifth Ward, it's still going to be a benefit because it'll allow the stormwater to, when we have the heavy rain events and stuff, it'll discharge the water more rapidly to the ultimate destination on the Kishwaukee River. So again, that's a benefit to all the residents. The same as the work on the Fifth Avenue and the additional bypass that we're proposing for that. The council has approved the property acquisitions and the easements necessary to put that line work in, and hopefully funding will become available to start in that process. And again, that's still part of the basin, part of the south side improvements to offer those benefits to the residents.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, Shannon, are you, have you concluded, or?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Under 5 other, A, disposition of the phone policy that you have in your packets. I wasn't aware that we didn't have a disposition of the phone policy, or that one was required, but I was made aware of that, so maybe the city attorney would like to comment if he could.
That's pretty simple. As the council probably knows, different employees have cell phones issued by the city, ranging from the majority of public works employees to myself, the chiefs, some of the other employees in the city. Not everybody does, though. Our phone carrier is Verizon, and you would not believe the rates they have for us to procure phones. I mean, pennies on the dollar compared to what you can buy them for in the stores. So, for example, most of the phones we get range in price from $0 to $50. Occasionally, you might see one in that $50 to $100 range, depending on what the availability is like, quite frankly. What it comes down to is we, in the past, as phones are replaced, kept them literally in a box, and then from time to time, the clerk's office will go and solicit different organizations that buy phones and see if they'll purchase them for us. Typically, we get between $20 and $40 per device. Not a lot of money. Because at that point, the ones we're buying from Verizon are several model years old. They're not, current models. And by the time we get rid of them, they're even further out of date. So we're getting about $20 to $40 from them. Occasionally, when an employee retires or separates from service in good graces, they'll say, hey, can I port my phone number over to my personal account? And we've allowed them to do that when we're able to do it. And occasionally, the question is, can I buy my cell phone? And what we were thinking was, well, if they want to keep their contact list and everything else like that, that's fine. And as long as we can be made whole, it doesn't matter anything to the city. So what the policy suggests is twofold. One, if an employee leaves the city in good graces, not fired, but retires or who's on someplace else, they can buy the phone from us for $40, which is, a little bit more than the average for what we actually get for it if we were to sell it on the open market. If that phone was bought by the city in the last 2 years, and it costs us more than $40, they'll pay us the actual cost of buying the phone. Because every once in a while, for example, I received a new phone, 6 months, a year ago. It was more than $40, so if I was to leave, I'd pay whatever the city's cost was for that phone. So that's the idea of the policy, is to set up a system by which it's done. Frankly, we've been doing something similar, at least with the phone numbers, for a while now, but this creates that policy and gives the guidance to the clerk's office.
Alderman Snow?
And what are the logistics of somebody taking the phone number with? Because obviously, if they're used to calling somebody for a city-specific thing, those same people are going to still maybe not know that that person's moved on. What are the general logistics that happen with that?
When we get a new phone for a new employee, we get a new number anyway, so it's the same problem. And those people are just notified of that case. Most of the employees that have them, they're not using them, for example, to, well, some of them might be, but most are not using it to call vendors or anything like that. It's usually, from my case, other attorneys that I'm dealing with on cases, and quite frankly, they also have the city hall numbers, so.
It would be up to that individual to make sure that, hey, I'm no longer with the city, you want to call somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when you read the policy, there's a caveat there that says so long as that number is no longer
Right.
needed by the city. So,
There's a few phones, I can't really think of one that would be subject to this policy, but for example, we have numbers that are dedicated for certain uses, the emergency call, so water and sewer. Now, those phones are carried not regularly by the same person, so they wouldn't be subject to this anyway, but if there was a number that we absolutely had to keep, we would keep that number.
all right, so could we get a motion then? Okay, motion by Alderman Snow, second by Alderman Stevens. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed, thank you. I'm sorry, Alderman Burden, I didn't see you over there.
Thanks, Mayor, appreciate it. And I'm a little late here, but I don't know if we kind of just skimmed over, going back to the budget if we could for a second.
Sure.
In the economic development, the economic business development line, did we skim over that for growth dimensions?
We did talk about, I think most of the talk was centered around the Boone County Council on Aging.
Right, because I see that we still have the same amount, and I believe the county, they decreased their contribution to growth dimensions, and I was hoping we would do the same thing this budget cycle.
Well, the county did decrease, I think the last 2 years, the county had originally, 2 years ago, I believe, was funding at $30,000 to growth dimensions. The last budget, previous budget, they reduced that by $7,500 to $22,500, and then subsequently they reduced it another $7,500. So they have cut their contribution towards growth dimensions from $30,000, $15,000 in 2 budget years. I mean, that's a good point. A lot of the things that we do with the county are shared. They're a 50-50 proposal, and that is the way that it has been done historically. So Alderman Burden is correct that that line item for them has been dramatically reduced, and I don't know, I think they had some roof work that they wanted to, was what I was told. They had some roof work on some buildings that they wanted to go ahead and be able to make repairs on, was one of the concerns. However, That's a fact. So they did make that reduction. So the city has continued to maintain, is it 55,000? Is that correct?
Correct.
And we have continued to fund that amount for the last four years?
For the last 5 years.
5 years. So there's your answer from me. So it's any other comments or questions?
Yeah, actually, so I'll make a motion to reduce this figure to $20,000 to start with.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor then to reduce the growth dimensions budget line item from 55,000. Did you say reduce it by 20,000 or to 20,000?
How about we reduce it to, it can't be, I don't agree with 55,000. So how about we reduce it to, or if we could come up with a compromise, if anybody wants to compromise, but I'll propose to reduce it from 55,000 to 30,000.
Okay. We have a motion then on the floor. Do we have a second to amend it? Second by Alderwoman Freeman had her hand up first. Alderman Stevens. Any discussion on that? Alderman Porter?
Well, I'm not sure who to ask this question to, but maybe Clayton might know. Do we have any usage statistics as far as the usage of the Boone County Council on Aging, as far as how many people in the city use the center and how many people from the county use it? Because that might determine, I think, the differences in how much we contribute as opposed to the county. If the city residents use it more than the county, residents.
This is explicitly for growth dimensions, line item, not the Boone County Council on Aging, but growth dimensions. Yeah. So, no, that's okay.
But they do keep records, kind of. I don't think they really keep records on.
Ms. Hanson, I see she had her hand up. She's going to probably correct me. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry. They actually run an urban and a rural, is my understanding, the Council on Aging, my understanding from the county, and our money just funds the urban. So it should just fund our riders. And they have another funding source for the county.
I see. Excuse me. Alderman Stevens, Freeman, and then Snow.
Where did I see something that Growth Dimensions has a pretty good bank account someplace, or a substantial funding source or bank account?
I do know that I think whenever the county had discussed reducing their funding for Growth Dimensions, I think at some point I had heard, I don't know if this is a fact, but it seemed like somebody had mentioned they had $1 million in their budget, and that's not true. That wasn't true. I believe their cash on hand is, I think, around 334,000, or maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. So that number, that is a number close anyhow to what they have. Alderman Snow, and then Alderwoman Freeman, okay.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. First is, how is it that, the county has, I guess, gotten away with funding so much less to Growth Dimensions? Do they not do the same amount of services for the county that they do for the city?
Well, I think that any economic growth is good for if it's good for the city, it's good for the county, correct?
Correct.
So I guess I'm not going to try and answer that for them, but what I am saying is that any economic development that Growth Dimensions brings to the city, it does have an impact on the county, as the city is a, county taxpayer.
Right. So I guess I wish Pam were here. How would, cutting their funding, how has the county cutting their funding, gonna impact the services that they're able to provide us? And did the county redirect that to the chamber, that money to the chamber?
The county, with their reduction in funding? Not that I'm aware of, no. Nope, and, I think Growth Dimensions, they play a pivotal part in growth, in locating big businesses here to the community. Certainly, any reduction, the counties as well. I'm sure that, I'm not going to speak for them, but I'm sure that they're not excited about that, but as you can imagine. Alderman Snow?
Well, I'm going to be voting no. I believe you'll find that the Growth Dimensions does add a significant value to our tax base in the overall scheme of things. And they're very instrumental in bringing new businesses into the area. Guessing most of the businesses that they do bring in wind up in the city limits because they need the water and sewer. So where the county may not benefit as much, but the city benefits more so in general. And the county by far has a, lack of another word, a crappy budget. They're always financially strapped, and they don't have the flexibility to do as much as the city because we are managed well. So I'm going to be voting no and would ask for a roll call vote when we do vote on it.
Okay, did I miss anybody on this side of the room? Alderwoman Prather, did you have your hand up, or?
Something. I really would feel very uncomfortable on voting something like this through without hearing from Growth Dimensions and how this would affect them.
Okay. Alderman Byrd?
Thanks again, Mayor. So, like has been mentioned, the county went from 50,000, right, down to 15,000.
The county went from 30,000 2 years ago, 2 budgets ago, to 15,000, and with a $7,500 reduction in the last 2 budget years.
Okay, so 30.
That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. So 30,000 to 15,000. So we're, even if we propose 30,000 from 55, we're still paying twice as much as the county. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Anybody?
One.
Alderman Byrd?
Sorry, thanks, Mayor.
No worries.
Okay, and then if we want Pam here, Growth Dimensions, maybe we could at the least just table this so we don't have to make the decision tonight, and Pam could come explain these figures to us.
I would, I would like to have her, if the council wants to hear from her. There's some questions here that obviously I don't know the answer to. She would probably be able to enlighten all of us, so. I see the city attorney's got his hand up.
Yeah, just real briefly, it's more of a procedural issue. The motion to amend is, I guess in theory, kind of a motion to amend a budget that has not even had a first reading yet.
Just a vote on changing it then?
Correct. And so what I was going to say is, and I guess this is for the clerk's benefit as well as my own, because I probably will not be around until next Monday. This would not appear on next Monday's agenda as city council. I would view this, and I would think the council would as well, the committee would as well, and tell me if I'm wrong, but direction to the administration to change the budget to reflect the decrease before it's presented for first reading. So it would not be up before the council as a vote next week. It would simply appear in the budget that's presented for first reading at the reduced amount if it was successful tonight. The second part of it, though, is somebody mentioned tabling this thing. Aren't you planning first reading next Monday night?
Yes.
So you could do one of two things. You could vote this up and the administration could make the change, have your first meeting next Monday night, invite somebody from Growth Dimensions to make the presentation. That would require you to amend the budget to put the money back if you wanted to after the first reading. Or you could leave it where it's at, have Growth Dimensions come in, present whatever evidence they have for why they need that amount of money. And if you want to decrease the budget at that point, decrease it at that point. I guess the sole thing I want to say is tonight's vote is not dispositive of the issue because we haven't had first reading yet.
So with that being said, it's certainly up to the pleasure of the motioner and second. Either way, I think it'll get heard before the budget is completed. So, Alderman Snow?
And on that note, even if we voted up or down tonight, nothing prevents anybody from making a motion at the next couple of meetings to edit it as well.
Correct.
So.
Correct.
And can we actually have it on the budget on the agenda, even though it is a first reading, have it as an item to discuss? Because generally speaking, we don't, but should we? Because we're gonna wind up, we've had these issues before where we wind up in a big quagmire time-wise. And it would be
We've done that in the
best-
past, certainly can do that, either at the request of the council committees or the administration. We can bring it back in the intervening committee of the whole for further discussion, certainly.
But can we discuss it also at the first reading? There's no reason we can't discuss it at the first reading as well. And generally speaking, it's just read into the record, but we can discuss it. It's an agenda item at that point.
There's no state law regarding that. It's a local ordinance on our procedure. I'd have to check that. I can't recall offhand. I can let you know by next Monday night.
Thanks.
Okay. I think, Alderman Brereton brings up a fair point. Many of the things that we share with the county, we share as a 50-50 investment. From that perspective, I think it's a fair point because in this case, the county has decided to cut funding, and regardless of what the reasoning is behind it, which I'm not sure I know the entireties of it, but that's a fact. They're contributing less than what the city has. So for him to bring that up, I think that's fair game. I think when you do comparables on what we do with the PSB, what they do, how we contribute, I think when we share those expenses, then this certainly looks like it's probably out of order, out of line. So, Alderman Snow?
Well, I'll remind everybody, this is, if I recall correctly, this is considered a public-private entity. So, by reducing, and I don't know what other public bodies contribute besides the city and the county, possibly the townships, I don't know. But, you're kind of getting to the point where you're negating the whole process. And so just toss that out there for food for thought.
Yeah, I'm not advocating that necessarily at all that way. I'm just telling you that when you look at it from a governmental contribution point from two parties that have always shared expenses, when you look at it that way, there's some disparity, especially with their current reductions that they've made. So how they see that, I don't know. I think they probably had some other investments that they wanted to do on things that they had, priorities. Now, whether or not they have a budget, I forget how you described their process, but I think you said that maybe the county had a tight budget or whatever. We all have a tight budget. We all have to live within our means, and we're all responsible for what we do here, what we can control, them included. So I think it would be advantageous, though, to have Growth Dimensions come back. It's up to the council how they want to proceed tonight, but I think it would be advantageous for them to come back, and they can talk about that. And any questions that we weren't able to get answered tonight, they'll certainly have an answer for you at that time. I think that's fair.
Mr. Mayor, one answer already. If you so chose to discuss it at first reading, there's nothing to prevent you from discussing it. You could not take any action, however, at first reading, including motions to amend. That would have to wait till second reading if you chose to do that, but you can certainly discuss it.
Okay.
And maybe I'm putting my nose where it doesn't belong. Has nothing to do with what the proper funding level is, but I would, from a personal note and having had to work with them, they do provide a very valuable service, and you're going to see that in a couple of weeks, I think. One of the things that happens routinely is what are called site selectors will submit requests to different municipalities, different areas, saying, do you have a site that can fit our needs? What kind of incentives are available? Those kinds of things. And usually those would go to your in-house economic development person to process those, handle the request for proposal, and get it out the door in a timely fashion. Neither the city or the county have such an economic development person. We rely upon Growth Dimensions to do that. So they do fulfill a very important function for the city, in addition to running the enterprise zone. Has nothing to do with the proper funding level. It's just keep in mind they do some good work for us.
Thank you. Alderman Snow.
In regards to the procedure, we can discuss it at next week's meeting. Can't make any motions for it, but can we get it put on the agenda for the next committee meeting? So again, as opposed to doing it at 2 weeks after next week, so we're not chasing the tail, we can get it done at a committee meeting and get a lot of stuff hashed out before we're at the deadlines.
You can certainly do all the discussion you want, either at the first reading or at the committee in between the two. Again, we've done this frequently in the past, not just for budget, but for zoning matters and what have you. Any changes you want to make a committee actual have to be made a second reading, though, as a motion, a second at second reading.
If we don't do it tonight.
Well, I think, yes.
Yes.
Yes. You know, you have a motion and a second on the floor now. Whatever you do with, whatever the council does with that motion and second, obviously, you know, it will come back to that second reading for any other changes or whatever action they choose to take. Maybe it's the same action tonight, maybe it's different, I have no idea, but we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Alderman Brereton?
Thanks again, Mayor. So is it in our best interest if I withdraw the motion for the night, City Attorney?
Completely up to you how you want to, it's completely up to the committee. Either way, it doesn't matter. I just want to make sure you understood that it was not dispositive. If the motion passes tonight, my presumption is that the administration will adhere to that request and reduce that line item accordingly for first reading.
Mm-hmm.
If you withdraw it, or if it's defeated, it'll be whatever the administration proposes in a week.
Yeah, if, that's exactly right.
Well, practical answer, it doesn't matter.
And the practical answer is that the council, at a second reading, it will have another bite at the apple. So whatever you do here tonight, you know, it's up to you. If you want to leave it on here for a vote, that's fine. And, you know, we can have growth, and we will have Growth Dimensions come back here and chat about that, answer any questions that are unresolved, and we can address it then as we go. We don't have a drop-dead date here. We've still got time to work with, but we don't want to run this to the 11th hour. And I think Alderman Snow might have mentioned that it was kind of a little bit of, what'd you say? Quagmire. Yeah, a quagmire. So I think if we can avoid that, either way, we will avoid it. So, yeah. So it's up to the individual with a motion and the second.
Okay, well, saying that, I'd love to vote for it tonight, but as long as it was discussed and we'll get a real crack at it and everybody can take some time to think about it, I'd like to withdraw the motion.
All right. And second agrees. Okay. We will have some further information on that, and maybe we can get some clarity. All right. Yeah, we need to go into executive session under 5B. executive session to discuss appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee or official pursuant to the 2C1 and collective bargaining matters pursuant to Section 2C2 of the Open Meetings Act. Motion to that effect. Motion by Alderman Snow. Do we have a second? Is it second by Alderman Porter? Excuse me just a minute. All right, yes. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor will answer yes. Any opposed, no. When the clerk calls the roll, please.
Brereton,
Aye.
Frank,
Aye.
Freeman. McGee. Porter. Prather,
Aye.
Snow,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
8 in favor.
Okay, and I would ask Chief Woody if he could stay for